If you've been hearing a lot about the health benefits of apple cider vinegar, you're definitely not the only one. But do any of these benefits have any merit? And can these benefits help with weight loss? Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Young. Let's take a practical look at apple cider vinegar so you can decide whether it's actually worth adding into your weight loss diet. Apple cider vinegar, also known as ACV, is made up by crushing up apples, then fermenting the resultant mixture. It's a two-step fermentation process. One step ferments it into an apple cider alcohol. The second step converts it into a vinegar. Where it goes from here differs depending on the manufacturer. At the most refined end, the apple cider vinegar is pasteurized, filtered until clear. The result is a vinegar that's very similar in composition to regular white vinegar. At the least refined end, apple cider vinegar is neither pasteurized, distilled, nor heavily filtered. The result is a cloudy liquid with some sedimentation, which most people associate with the most beneficial form of apple cider vinegar. But does this cloudy elixir actually hold much benefit? If you Google it, you're gonna find claims that cover just about every medical malady. There's no way I'm gonna dig through all this junk, but I will address the ones related to weight loss. I'm gonna do my best to put these benefits into a practical perspective. Also, I'm only gonna cover observed benefits in humans, not in mice or other research organisms. The first claim is that apple cider vinegar can help with glucose control. The idea is that apple cider vinegar helps your body to better use glucose and carbohydrates in your body to convert it into energy and hopefully leave less of it for fat production. In theory, controlling blood sugar levels might help with weight loss, particularly in those with poor glucose control, like insulin-resistant individuals and diabetics. There are some studies that look at vinegar to help control and lower blood sugar levels that have shown some mild benefits. Unfortunately, none of them have definitively shown that this effect on blood sugar actually translates to any substantial weight being lost. There are plenty of reasons why this might be the case. Most likely, the mild effects on blood sugar are not enough to have an impact. So you might see some small effects on controlling blood sugar by taking apple cider vinegar. It's just not likely going to affect your weight. Another interesting thing to note is that many of these studies are simply using acetic acid or regular white vinegar, not necessarily apple cider vinegar. So you likely don't even need to use apple cider vinegar to achieve this effect, and you could probably just use regular white vinegar. Anyways, if you really wanted to control your blood sugar levels, a far more effective method would be simply decrease your intake of sugars and carbohydrates in the first place, and increase your dietary intake of healthy fats and proteins. Another commonly claimed benefit is the ability of apple cider vinegar to help with appetite and digestion. The claimed mechanisms are twofold. First, the ability of apple cider vinegar to help stimulate digestive enzymes, and second, to increase the acidity in the stomach to help break down food. Let's talk about the first one. You may notice when you taste something sour, you begin to salivate. Apple cider vinegar is quite sour and can help achieve this effect. This is true for some people. Sour flavors help to promote salivation and release more enzymes to help break down food. Unfortunately, this frequently increases appetite, and if you're trying to control or reduce your appetite, stimulating it is probably the last thing you'd want to do for weight loss. Let's talk about the second one. Your stomach produces acid to help break down food. Apple cider vinegar is quite acidic, with approximately a pH of 2.5. So having some apple cider vinegar should help with increasing acidity, right? Well, stomach acid is quite a bit more acidic than apple cider vinegar, with a pH of approximately 1.5. That's a pH difference of 1. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot. However, the pH system is based on a logarithmic scale, meaning that a difference of 1 means that stomach acid is actually 10 times more acidic than apple cider vinegar per volume. Given that the average adult stomach produces around 1.2 to 1.5 liters of stomach acid a day, and you can see why having 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar is a bit like pouring a cup of water into a lake to increase the water levels. It's not really gonna make a difference. If you really do have low stomach acid issues, I suggest just taking a digestive enzyme or betaine HCl to more effectively manage low stomach acid levels. If you've taken a look at apple cider vinegar, you'll notice that unfiltered apple cider vinegar contains a sediment at the bottom, known as the mother. The sediment contains the residual products of production. It contains small amounts of fiber, minerals, and bacteria left over from the fermentation process. Some people claim that this sediment is what makes apple cider vinegar so beneficial. You just need to take a brief look at the nutritional label and you'll find out that the nutritional value of this small amount of sediment is minuscule. There's basically no vitamins, a small amount of potassium, but nothing much else. Realistically, the amount of probiotic bacteria that you're getting from the sediment is gonna be very small. You'll probably get more benefits from the probiotic fortified yogurts you get from the supermarket, or better yet, from a probiotic supplement. Also, not all probiotic strains are beneficial for human health. If you really want to get some probiotics into your diet, I suggest just taking a probiotic supplement. Here's another benefit that's a little more anecdotal. I've heard a lot of patients tell me that it improves their energy in the morning or before a workout. Apple cider vinegar doesn't really provide any energy itself. It's not going to be like drinking caffeine or coffee. But if you've tasted something really sour, you might have noticed it seems to awaken all the senses, kind of like biting into a lemon. So it might kind of perk you up temporarily in that way if you have a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar before a workout or in the morning. In this case, you'd have to take the apple cider vinegar as a liquid, since you need to taste it, and apple cider vinegar supplements in pill form would be useless for this particular benefit. Because so many of the benefits we've talked about are related to acetic acid, or the vinegar component, you might be wondering if you could just use white vinegar instead. For the most part, yes you could. The acetic acid content is pretty similar for both. In fact, I would say both are practically the same for their effects on weight, with undistilled apple cider vinegar having just a small amount of additional potassium. A big difference between the two, however, is the way both are produced commercially. Apple cider vinegar comes from the dual fermentation of mashed up apples. Much like winemaking, the starting ingredients are naturally grown, and the process is largely biochemical in nature. White vinegar used to be sourced from the fermentation of other plants like barley, grains, and grapes, much like apple cider vinegar was sourced from apples. However, most distilled white vinegar today comes from an industrial process that converts large amounts of a toxic chemical called methanol into acetic acid in a process called methanol carbonylation. This process does put the white vinegar into contact with some toxic industrial chemicals, and although the distillation and purification process afterwards typically removes all these nasty chemicals, there are some people who are still concerned about trace amounts of these chemicals remaining. I would say the risk is very low since the distillation process is highly pure and is considered food safe by the FDA. Also, if you're typically only consuming like a tablespoon or 2 of this stuff per day, any hypothetical impurities would be insignificant. But if this still bothers you, that would be one of the few times I would consider apple cider vinegar over distilled white vinegar for weight loss. Keep in mind that the cost for distilled white vinegar is far cheaper than organic apple cider vinegar, sometimes costing around 100 times less per volume. So if cost is a big factor for you, white vinegar is probably the way to go. What about lemon juice? Is it the same thing as apple cider vinegar? Although they both taste sour and have about the same acidity or pH level, the source of lemon juice's sourness comes from citric acid rather than acetic acid. These are completely different chemicals, so strictly speaking, they're completely different from a nutrition and biochemical standpoint. Nutrition-wise, lemon juice has a good amount of vitamin C and small amounts of fruit sugar in it, but the overall calories provided by both are low. For weight loss, the overlapping benefits lemon juice would have with apple cider vinegar would only be the things related to the sourness, like perking yourself up due to the sour taste, but beyond that, nothing else. So, what benefits does apple cider vinegar have for weight loss? If you have blood sugar issues like insulin resistance or are a type 2 diabetic, it might mildly help with blood sugar control. There's also some evidence it might help with cholesterol levels if you have cholesterol problems. However, it's not going to be very effective for weight loss itself. Much of the hype around apple cider vinegar appears to be more driven by a marketing push rather than actual health benefits. So, if you're not sure about trying apple cider vinegar, a cheap alternative could be simply trying regular white vinegar and seeing if that helps, especially if you already have it at home. Therapeutically, having white vinegar is not that much different than having apple cider vinegar for weight loss. While I have nothing against people who use apple cider vinegar for weight loss, I don't believe it'll be a game changer for most people. And for those who do find it a game changer, I suspect if they switched to regular vinegar, they probably wouldn't notice too much of a difference. But if you really do want to try apple cider vinegar, you might as well aim for the undistilled organic apple cider vinegar. Also, have the apple cider vinegar in liquid form, ideally diluted with water so it won't hurt your tooth enamel as much. Don't bother with those apple cider vinegar pills or gummies since you're getting so little actual apple cider vinegar in those things. Like, I couldn't say for sure that having apple cider vinegar is gonna have some minor benefits or not, but I can say for sure that these apple cider vinegar supplements and gummies are totally useless. Most of those pills have at most a half a gram of apple cider vinegar per pill. There are 15 grams in a tablespoon of liquid. You'll need to take 60 or more of these pills per day if you're planning to take the equivalent of 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar per day. That's like the whole bottle. Do you have apple cider vinegar on your diet? And do you find it helpful? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel and leave me a like. Hit the notification bell if you want to stay up to date, and share this video with someone you know can use the help.